Emergency, emergency, come right away. All right. But speaking of doctors and emergencies, should we get into some AEW now?
I think that's all that's left, yeah.
That's all that's, well, and in that case, God damn it. Every time they dangle the carrot, but we get the stick. They dangle the shit we want to see, and then for one reason or another, it does not materialize or matriculate over to us. Bryan Danielson was the best wrestler in the world. Single heel, capable of being the world champion. They put him in a babyface group of garbage wrestlers. We finally get the world title belt off of Hang Up Adam Page. It's because every time he calls people on the phone, they find out it's him, they hang up on him. And on to CM Punk, and that lasts 3 days, and he hurts himself in a TV match. They're snake bit. Again, as I've mentioned, there's Vince McMahon and everybody in the WWE trying to hand this thing to here, take this silver platter with the victory spot in the wrestling war. We want you to win this. We want to give you talent. We're running our talent off and into your waiting arms. We are doing the most boring television that we've ever produced in the 50 years this company's been around. We are begging you to win this thing, and they still can't do it. So now, and we're going to talk about MJF being a genius and brilliant, but we don't know when we're going to see him as all these things play out. And now Punk has just announced on the Rampage last night he was injured on Wednesday night. I guess now it's a foot. I thought it might be the knee, but it's apparently his foot. And I believe, I don't know this for sure, but I believe he did it when he tagged in and did the springboard, was going to come in to start his comeback with a springboard, and one foot slipped off the rope when he landed. He landed on his feet hard and started a punching comeback, so he saved it. He didn't go down. But I've got to think that's when he did it, because that was an odd movement that primarily caused him to land on his left foot, and he was limping on his left leg.
When he came out later in the night, and this wasn't on TV, this was some of the fan footage during the MJF segment, Punk came out seemingly to talk to MJF while all this was going on, and he had a noticeable limp at that point.
Yeah. And so he's going to need surgery. He's not... Jericho couldn't get it straight on Rampage. He didn't relinquish the belt. They're doing the interim champion thing. So Punk is still the AEW champion, but while he's out of action with an injury, they're going to crown an interim champion. They're going to have a battle royal next Wednesday on Dynamite. Those always work. Everybody loves to be in them. The fans love to see them. They draw great ratings. Can you hear the sarcasm in my voice on all those things? And the winner of the Battle Royal will fight Moxley, and the winner of that will go to the Forbidden Door pay-per-view and fight somebody from Japan, and that person will be the interim champion. The Battle Royal thing is so over. Does anybody ever want to see a Battle Royal anymore unless it's the Royal Rumble, which is kind of not even a Battle Royal, which is what makes it good?
I don't think so. The Battle Royal itself hasn't been a draw in forever. And when you see it on TV, I think a lot of wrestling fans instantly groan, especially when it's a Battle Royal where the results of the Battle Royal, which is a gimmick match, lead to something that's more important.
The Mad Hatter, Tony Khan, but this is his opportunity. He can go from the outhouse to the penthouse. He can turn chicken shit into chicken salad, whatever simile you'd like to express. Danielson wins the Battle Royal. Danielson beats Moxley. We can't have that belt on Moxley again. That would be just repugnant. Danielson wins the Battle Royal. Danielson beats Moxley. Danielson goes to the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Danielson can work with all the Japanese guys. That's his wheelhouse. And have a good match with whoever the New Japan guy is. And Danielson can be the champion. And then, however long Punk's surgery recuperation is, Then when he comes back, the real champion versus the interim champion, and you got CM Punk versus Bryan Danielson. That's the only way I can see that Tony can make up for the letdown. And it's not Punk's fault. Everybody gets hurt. The timing was impeccable here, as it usually is with anything like this. But they've just crowned Punk champion. And now somebody's got to follow this for the next couple of months or however long it's been. Can anybody on that roster do it but Danielson?
Let me throw a few names at you, and I'm not saying I would pick them, but just thinking of top names there, people who have been used as top names there. You wouldn't put the belt back on Adam Page right now. It doesn't feel right in any way, correct?
No. Good God, no. Jesus.
If Omega was ready to come back, would you do Omega? Not you. I'm not talking about you and your things about Omega, but he's a former world champion there. He's been gone a while. It's a way to have him come back and make a splash. If you were going to have him and Punk do a match.
If Omega was ready, I would have put him in the Moxley spot and had him be the last guy that whoever my next champion is beats on the way to the Forbidden Door pay-per-view to win the title.
And you said you wouldn't do Moxley already, and I agree with you on that.
Well, yeah, he's besides the fact he's already had it. He wasn't very good to begin with. He's still not very good. And Jesus Christ, we'd have to see more of him. So for all those reasons, no. And like you said, Twinkle Toes ain't ready, but even if he was, he's had it also. And the bar has been set a little higher now. We just had CM Punk for 3 days. We're going to back up and go to the indie-rific crowd, or are we going to go with another talented star, Bryan Danielson? If the whole thing wasn't going on with MJF, that would be a heat-seeking missile for some way to him manipulate himself into winning this battle royal and doing whatever and having that belt for when Punk came back. But since he's otherwise occupied, I think Danielson's the only way to go.
To be fair, we don't really know anything. We don't know how long Punk's going to be out. We don't know if he's going to be around. I mean, one of the things, and I hate to say it this way, because I want to see Punk wrestle, and his promos have been just impeccable, but he's probably my favorite commentator they have there. Is this a way to get him on commentary while he's out and have him get guys over by talking about them better than Excalibur, Tony, and Jim Ross do?
I wouldn't put him on there now and have him on there for a period of time. Once they get a set idea of how long he'll probably be out, then I would bring him in to do that intermittently and maybe steadily for the last 3 or 4 weeks so that he could get into an interaction with whoever he's going to be fighting and when he's back in the ring, and maybe even before we know he's ready to come back, if he was an announcer and he had an interaction with a guy and fuck it, he's going to ignore doctor's orders and do the old thing where, I know I can take care of him. I've got to do this. It's personal or whatever, and come back early, quote unquote. That might be something. I wouldn't just put him out there if it's going to be 4 months. I wouldn't put him out there every week because, the one good thing about this is now they got a second chance at not devaluing his wrestling appearances just for the sake of it, where he wrestles everybody just because they need ratings. If he's injured, he can't wrestle. They can have updates. They can have taped promos, maybe a live appearance or two, but I would leave him. I'd leave him off TV for a while to get the bloom back on the rose and get the fresh back. So now that how can I miss you if you won't go away? He's going away. Now let's create the longing for him to really come back. They already want him to come back. Let's really capitalize on that. So the more you see him, the less, unless it's, like I said, focused on an angle toward the end that's going to get him back in the ring with somebody, the more you see him regularly, the less impact his return is going to have, because how can he return if he's never really been away? They did it with Austin when a couple of times when he was injured, found different ways to have him still show up on the program, being suspended, running in and attacking somebody, the beer truck, whatever the fucking case. But that's hard to do And also, it was a unique time and a unique person. And everybody's so smart now, would they think, well, they're trying to do the old Austin shit with Punk. He can't wrestle, but they've still got him on TV doing something every week. See, remember, we never told anybody Austin was hurt. The people then didn't know he was not wrestling because he was hurt and injured. They just thought he's doing all these crazy things because he's Steve fucking Austin. So that got him over more than if he'd been healthy and wrestling every week, but that's hard to pull off. It's a very gimmick-specific thing for a certain kind of guy, and people have kind of got smart to it now, and they already know he's hurt.
And and again, we don't know if it's 3 months or 6 months.
Or 6 weeks or whatever. If it makes me feel better, it's a foot instead of a knee. And when I heard that he said something was broken and needed surgery, well, you don't usually break shit in your knee that needs surgery. And that could be he can come back. I mean, people, Kerry Von Erich had his foot amputated. People can have catastrophic injuries on a foot, but you can come back as an athlete, as a wrestler, from a foot injury where you're still ambulatory, even if it's painful, a lot easier than a knee. A knee affects your in-ring game going forward, even after it's healed, in ways that you can't predict. So at least it shouldn't be really long and it shouldn't be really bad, but it's not great timing.
Hey, let me ask you something. And, I am happy about the fact that CM Punk is the one guy that seems to be able to tell a story in the ring based around injuries and body parts. So whatever does happen in the future, if it happens during a match, he'll make it work. But traditionally in wrestling history, or at least here in the Northeast, if you didn't defend your title within 30 days, you were stripped of the title. Tony Khan started doing the interim champion thing a little while back. He did it with the TNT title with Cody and Sammy, I believe. Do you agree with the idea of doing interim champions as opposed to stripping a guy if he's not defending within 30 days?
Well, the 30-day thing was the standard rule everywhere years ago in the territories and for the NWA title. And I mean, that's probably the one rule that all the fans knew by heart above any other. Champion must defend the title every 30 days. And they would work angles around it. Well, it's only been 28 days or whatever. I don't have to do the blah, blah, blah. That's all gone by the wayside. It hadn't been talked about in ages. And especially after the pandemic. And then you had Brock Lesnar was the WWF champion and only worked 3 days a year, whatever. If you started going back to that now, although it is reasonable and, is another one of those rules you can make something out of, would people ever even still pick up on it at this point? And the problem is, if it was going to be less than to your question, the interim champion, if it was going to be less than 6 or 8 weeks, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just announced that Punk is injured, and Tony Khan, because he's the new champion, has given him special dispensation not to have to defend for 6 weeks or whatever, and have a heel come out and bitch about it. And maybe that way you could have at least reestablished the idea that rule was there. If it's going to be 3 or 4 months, then not only do you have somebody to defend the belt, not that people are going to take that real seriously because they're still going to think Punk's a champion, but then you can start building for the return of the real champion, and that should be the first person he fights is the interim champion. So if you've got 3 months, 4 months, pile all the heat on that. That's why I say Danielson needs to be a heel, needs to be a good talker, needs to be a guy who can work with anybody. Well, you've just narrowed down the entire AEW roster to practically nil when you just say those 3 things. And that could be one of the biggest matches they've ever presented.
From day one, that's what we said. From day one of AEW, we said the biggest match you can get with people who are potential free agents or anything else would be CM Punk versus Bryan Danielson, because that's when we didn't know what he was going to do with WWE. That's what we always said was the biggest match, and it still is.
And what was the biggest match in WWE just a few months ago was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed title. We're going to reunite. We're going to unite these championships. One champion. That's what everybody wants. The fans want. So now AEW gets a chance to create their own situation. But if they do some bullshit like, let's elevate Daniel Garcia, he can be the interim champion. Well, then they've just shot themselves in the foot and they might as well go back to bed. It needs to be somebody on a marquee that people will pay to see against CM Punk and 3 months to heat it up rather than get a guy over from scratch. That's my comment.
I wonder if Punk's going to be healthy and back by the time, I guess it would be early fall when Tony runs the stadium show in Queens. Because that would be a place to do a Punk versus Danielson match.
Well, what's early fall? What month is that?
Did they do it in September or October last year? I think it was September.
Well, let's see. June, July, August, September, 3 to 4 months. We shall see.
Last year was September 22nd. So that's why I said it could be the end of September, early October.
Maybe I'll get a birthday present in September. Punk will come back to wrestle.